Okay, we should be live. Hopefully no technical glitches today. Again, this would not be an e-commerce Aholic live stream if we did not have technical glitches. I appreciate everyone joining in. We're going to give them just a minute for folks to join in here. YouTube doesn't really send out these notifications until we go live, so it takes a little while for everybody to spool in. So we're in no rush here today. I'm going to pour myself a drink. I'm trying to get rid of this Calumet Farm here. It's definitely not my favorite, and it looks like we've about got rid of this bottle, but unfortunately, someone saw me with this bottle on the live stream and decided to send me another one. So you got to be careful about what you drink on the live streams here. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation, a conversation a lot of people have asked for. And I was trying to figure out exactly how to do it. But we want this to be more of a conversation. So it's not just about us on the live stream. We want you to help steer and guide this conversation as well. So we're live streaming right now on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube. We're going to try to take the conversations from LinkedIn and from YouTube and help you guys, have you guys help guide this conversation. So post your thoughts, post your comments, and then we'll try to answer any questions that anybody has. I've got a great guest today. I've tried to have them on the live stream at least a time or two in the past, and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. Mark, if you would, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Mark William Lewis, and I am a Magento developer that's been working on Magento for about 7 or 8 years now. I think first Magento site I did was on Magento 1.2. And so I've been with the platform for a pretty long time. Now I run a small agency focused on specifically e-commerce, Magento 1, Magento 2, Shopify. I've definitely had a lot of conversations in the community recently about Magento 2 and particularly the open source versus commerce kind of debate, but it's not really a debate. It's just more of a discussion of pros and cons of each option. And I'm really excited, and thank you for having me here, TJ.
Anytime. Now we've changed things up just a little bit. You may have already noticed we've got some fancier new titles that animate up and look a little better to me than the ones we've had in the past. We're also going to try out a new view here we've got, and we're going to be able to go with the side-by-side view. Now, the problem, I'm going to go ahead and preface this, the problem with the side-by-side view is when the guests are talking, I've got a lot of things going on. So when he's talking, I'm going to be looking over here at comments and over there at comments and here at things and checking on different stuff. So we're going to test this view out, see how it works, see if you like it. But, if it doesn't work out, then we can always adapt and adjust. All right, so we're going to get this conversation started. Again, it looks like we've got quite a few folks pinging on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And so, yeah. All right. So we're going to try to get this going. I'm going to try to keep up with all of your comments. It's going to be a hectic live stream. And so Mark William Lewis, pizza emoji, Mark William Lewis, right? We got the pizza emoji title here. Yep.
Thank you for making that possible.
Pizza? What's with the pizza emoji?
It's a kind of an inside joke, but I registered the domain name rk.pizza. So I have m@rk.pizza, and also I love pizza. So it's just one of my passions. I love pizza.
I understand that. So Magento open source versus commerce edition. Now, it's an interesting debate. A lot of merchants have this question. A lot of the merchants we talk to are, curious as to whether or not the commerce version of the platform is worth the price. When there's an open source version out there, why would you go pay the license price for what I still refer to as enterprise Magento can just get mad at me if they want to. I tend to hang on to naming conventions just a little longer than most, I guess. But if I say enterprise, I mean Magento Commerce. If I say Magento Commerce, I mean enterprise. For those that may not know the correct terminology. So in your opinion, and we work with both, and I believe you do as well, both versions of the platform.
Yep.
What are some of the things you dive into? What are some of the conversations you have with merchants when they're trying to decide which version is correct for them?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, it comes down to budget. Obviously Magento Commerce has a pretty hefty price tag. I think it starts at maybe 20,000 a year, and depending on whether you get cloud or on-premise edition. So that's one, like, that's a barrier to entry right there versus open source, which starts at free. So if it's a smaller merchant, if they're just starting off, if they don't have any revenue at all, it doesn't really make sense to like make that upfront investment in something until you have actual revenue, and you're rolling with your e-commerce and you're scaling up. And that point, you start talking about, all right, what's the next level? What do we need Magento Commerce, or are we good on Magento open source? Is Magento open source limiting us? That's kind of where it starts. I think it's a budget thing. And one other thing that I know that I don't have as much experience with, I think you have more experience with B2b. I know that Magento Commerce has a lot of B2b features that isn't in the open source edition. And so that might be a consideration, that particular feature is really powerful as I understand it. And so it might be worth it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the conversation. If the easy disqualifier, that's normally what we like to do when we're having this conversation with merchants, is what are easy things to disqualify you from either one of those choices? And the size of the merchant can be an easy disqualifier. And there are some exceptions. So it's not necessarily a hard line rule. If you really need some of the functionality for something that is critical to your business that enterprise provides, then by all means, let's consider that version. But if you're spending your last dollar on the implementation, then do you really want the license costs on top of that? No. If you're a really small merchant that is trying to evaluate Magento, or maybe you were on Magento 1 when that was the right fit and you're trying to weigh your options now, then by all means, don't spend every dollar you have on just the license cost, because that's not going to do you any good. Now, most merchants we're talking to, though, are established merchants. We don't do an awful lot of brand new builds, as far as, this is a merchant that's just been founded, or they're just making their first move into e-commerce. Just about everybody's already done that, unless they're starting a new business. You might be starting a new division of your business that's a new build, but not a from scratch e-commerce, mom and pop shop, never done e-commerce. They're out there. We just don't typically talk to those. And so when we engage in a merchant, really, I hate to throw out numbers because there are exceptions, but if you're doing sub $1 million a year in sales, we typically don't recommend the enterprise version of the platform. That's usually where we're at. If you're doing $500,000 or 400,000 or 700,000, with a few exceptions depending on your functionality need, we don't normally recommend it. Is that kind of where you're at as well, or are you at kind of a different number for that easy disqualification?
Yeah, I think that definitely is an easy disqualification. Under $1 million, it just doesn't really make financial sense. But also, I look at not only revenue but margins. Different industries like fashion. Honestly, fashion has like super, super tight margins. And so, a fashion store might be doing it. It might look like their sales and their revenue are like killing it, but like their margins are so low that they're actually not making a lot of profit. And I had a merchant that I've been working with on Magento 2 for a really long time, and I looked at their sales; they're killing it. And then I 2 or 3 years into their business, I got a bankruptcy notice, and it was like, all the costs were adding up and the competition. So I think revenue is a good indicator, but also make sure that they are able to be profitable. If I'm sure that if the merchant isn't profitable, they can't survive, but for so long until they go under, and then they're no longer a client. And you don't want that. You don't want
Right.
to starve them in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, there are exceptions across the board. There are a lot of industries that are particularly susceptible to those numbers being skewed. B2b being one. You may be selling $400 items with lower margins, and so you don't. You're doing $1 million in sales, but you're basically just getting started. You may have automotive where they have extremely high average order values. There are industries where that varies. So, if you're a merchant watching this and you're on one side or the other, that's not an immediate disqualifier, but that's really a good sign. And what we're looking for are those easy wins that say, okay, this is the right platform for you. Once you get
Yeah.
beyond those easy wins, we really start talking about functionality. And do you need the functionality that comes with the bigger system, the enterprise version of the system? In
Right.
your opinion, like when you're having these conversations with merchants, are there particular pieces of functionality that you really lean on to see whether or not it's worth it for that merchant to, just pony up and pay the license price?
Yeah, I mean, the B2B module is certainly one of them, with some caveats where if their B2B integration is so deep with their ERP, a company Corvus does like SAP integrations with Magento, they basically have to override the B2B functionality in Magento. And so, if you can use the B2B functionality kind of natively, I think that's a killer feature, definitely. And Now, right, this is kind of controversial, but Page Builder is a pretty killer feature. I mean, honestly, like I definitely have some qualms with the fact that Magento is kind of holding back Page Builder right now, based on uh, they've given confusing signals to the community about Page Builder's like availability. But right now it is available and it's only in commerce, and Page Builder is awesome. It was based on Bluefoot CMS, which I think was originally developed by Gene Commerce and Dave McCauley. And I used it on Magento 1. It was amazing. And I think a lot of people were really, really anticipating it for Magento 2, and they've been kind of chomping out the bit for it. And it is on Magento 2 commerce now, and it is amazing. I think it was worth the wait. I still wish it had been available like a year ago, but they took their time for a reason, and I think that's good. So right now, that's a killer feature. Other than that, I don't think there's many other killer features in commerce that can't be fairly reproduced by a third-party module. And I think kind of there's some debate, and we can kind of talk more about this, whether a feature that you get from a first-party module in Magento is better or worse than using a third-party module. So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, that definitely is an option, is to choose open source and then add third-party modules. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but I want to kind of go back and agree with you on those points. That if you need the B2b functionality, you need to pay the damn license price. That's pretty much my opinion. I mean, there are some B2B modules out there, but if you need that functionality, if you need product exclusivity across catalogs, if you need negotiated pricing, quick reorder and company accounts and those types of things, it's worth the license price. Especially on the smaller end. I mean, if you're doing billions of dollars in sales and your license price is really expensive, then you might could have that debate. But if you're a SMB merchant, then it's just not worth to build it and then have all of that technical debt that comes with trying to build this functionality yourself. There's also something to the debt that comes with picking out third-party modules. If you're trying to replicate one single piece of functionality, that's fine. But the best Magento site is a clean Magento site. And if you're picking out 37 modules and then customizing on top of those to try to create, 4 or 5 different pieces of functionality that come with Enterprise, then I feel like you're making a mistake, and that your costs long term are probably going to be similar to what your license price is going to be. You may get it cheaper, but your headache is going to go up along with that. And so, go ahead.
I disagree with that some, but from kind of a nuanced perspective of
Sure.
Third party total cost of ownership. And we'll get into more of the support aspect of Magento Commerce later, but as it stands right now with Magento Commerce support being pretty bad, I won't go into it right now. We can talk more about it later. If you have a problem with a first party module, your only like support option is Magento support. And if you have a problem with a third party module, like if it's with a good extension vendor, like maybe Aheadworks or Mirrorspit, they're really on the ball of support, honestly, and they have been really good about keeping up with Magento versions. And so from a support aspect, I think an argument could be made that it is easier to support the third-party modules than the first-party modules until Magento support can match the third-party support. What do you think?
Yeah, support is an interesting thing, right? Every cloud hosting platform out there has had issues. It's new. Magento hosting in the cloud is problematic. Now, some are way far ahead on solving those problems than other people. Some have their support structure and system worked out more than others do. Magento, here's the good and bad of Magento support, and there's no sense in trying to sugarcoat it. They've definitely had, and they will admit that they have had their issues with supporting the cloud platform, and unfortunately, really, the cloud support is Magento Enterprise support. Even if you're hosting it on site, it's really the same support. And so, a lot of the complaints are coming with the cloud support. And the reason it's coming with cloud support is because that's where most people are having their issues, because developers are accustomed to, on-prem, they've got full access to the server. If you're an enterprise customer, your first line of support is your agency if you have one. And then the agency can fall back on Magento support if they have problems. That is a theoretical benefit of the platform, is that if you're on open source and your agency doesn't do a good job supporting you, or your host doesn't do a good job supporting you, it is now your problem. Whereas with Magento Enterprise, you've got that, fallback from the agency theoretically to Magento. Obviously, there's been problems, so we can debate how good that theoretical fallback has been. I believe the benefit of Magento, and we're privy, at least I'm privy, I'm pretty sure you are as well, to more information than most. So we know, or at least I know what's coming, and that is a heavy investment in adding resources to improve the support at Magento. They have been hiring people about as fast as they can find them. They've brought on just an incredible headcount to improve response times on support. And so nobody in this business, or at least, in the Magento hosting game, has the resources like Adobe has to try to solve this problem. Now, it's going to take them time, and they're behind, but it's a problem that I feel like is going to be rectified over time.
I think it needs to be rectified. I've definitely had conversations with Matt Doggett, who I think you spoke with, and Gary Spector, and really emphasized I think support is more important than they really know it, because I think if the support's not there, none of the extra features matter. None of the extra parts of commerce matter, because if a commerce specific feature breaks and you're having an issue, you don't even have the resource of going to GitHub. If something breaks in open source, you can go on GitHub, Stack Overflow, and honestly, most of the issues I've faced with open source, someone's already figured it out, and it's already fixed, and we can either upgrade to the newest release where it's been fixed, or we can patch it. And bugs happen, and so we're able to squash that bug. But with commerce, if you have a commerce specific bug or issue, really your only recourse is to reach out to Magento support and hope that they get back to you, or pay your agency a significant amount of hours to maybe dig into this core architecture issue. And I'll give you a story about, we kind of alluded to Magento support being kind of bad right now. And, I think most people know, a couple weeks ago, I kind of highlighted a tweet where I had a ticket with Magento support for 3 months. It was a pretty simple ticket. It was question bugs about a promotion, a buy one get one free promotion, and 3 months went by, no update. I asked for updates a couple times, and they were we still don't have an update. That's the state of it right now, and it's bad, but it hasn't always been that way. I remember an instance with Magento 1, and I had a merchant that was on enterprise, and it was Q4, and they're very seasonal, and they were facing some database locking issues. People were trying to check out at the same time, and occasionally orders wouldn't get inserted into the database, and it was a pretty serious issue. And it was becoming more serious, and the next day they told me that they were going to be on Good Morning America, and I almost had a heart attack or stroke or whatever when I heard that. And so I threw this database locking issue over to Magento Enterprise Support the day before. And when I woke up in the morning, 7 a.m., they had responded. They sent me a patch. We were able to test that patch, an hour before they went live on Good Morning America, and push it out 15 minutes before, and they survived. And it was great business. But I really imagine what that situation would be like now, where you have a pretty serious mission critical issue, and you can't expect a response within 3 months. You don't know when you're going to get a response, and I think that kind of uncertainty around the support quality, just really, really colors the entire experience with the enterprise product. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
the support is a concern, right? That is one of the things you are buying with the platform. I think long term, in the long game, the issues are a blip on the radar. It's not this content, this live stream lives on forever. So if you're catching this in the future, I feel like you're going to see a tremendous difference just based on what I know about the energy and effort that Magento has been putting into this problem. You're going to see significant improvements in the near term future. And if you don't see significant improvements in the near term future, we'll come back and we'll tell you that. But
Yeah.
it's definitely part of what you're buying with enterprise. I want to start getting to some of the viewer conversation that's going on right now. Looks like we've got
Yeah.
about the same number of people watching, actually more people watching on LinkedIn. I've got LinkedIn over here. I've got YouTube over here. More people watching on LinkedIn, but the conversation is really hot and heavy over here on YouTube. So let's get to some of the conversation here. Let's see. We had one from. I've got so many pages I've got to scroll through here. All right. Karen Baker. Karen, thanks for watching. Karen's comment was, and my comment didn't show up. Look at there. See, we tested all of it. Oh, there it is. It's just slow. It's just really slow. I'm going to send that again. Karen's question is, the bigger question really is, how much does Magento 2 open source cost to maintain a year? And so I think there's two important points here with that. One being that the open source version is not free, okay? That's one thing you have to understand. It is not free. If your goal is to not pay any money for an e-commerce platform, this is not your avenue for success. Okay, so I want to make sure we cut right through that disillusion. Yes, it is open source. The license for the software itself does not cost you anything. You can go download it to your hard drive and it is now your baby. But it takes a lot of effort to keep it patched and updated and to make sure it's hosted and to handle your traffic. And so it requires someone that understands the platform to do it properly. Magento certified developers or even experienced developers that don't care about certifications are very, very expensive and hard to come by these days. And so, Magento open source is perhaps a lower cost option to enterprise, but I still would not classify it as a low cost e-commerce platform. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100% of Magento 2 open source isn't free to maintain. It's free to honestly, you can't really. Okay, you could launch a Magento store and like upload the files, and you'd have Luma, the theme, and like even Luma, it's not particularly functional. It's more like a boilerplate thing for developers to develop on top of. So yeah, it's not free. Magento open source versus Magento commerce. There was some discussion recently about like Magento published a paper on Magento commerce versus Magento open source on the TCO of that, total cost and analysis, and or total cost of ownership. And their take was Magento commerce really like reduces your cost for a lot of reasons. They even cited support as one of the reasons. But I think and that reality was a reality, like kind of the situation I described to you with the Good Morning America client. That saved me, I don't know, that probably saved me like 20 hours to dig in the core code and like, find out database locking issues. So I think the idealized Magento commerce can lead to a lower total cost of ownership. But I think at its state right now, I would say it's about equal, honestly. You're still going to have to pay an agency to develop your store, maintain it, and and you'll have to pay hosting. whether you're on Magento Cloud, you're gonna still have to patch on Magento Cloud, or whether you're on MageMojo and Nexus, that's the same everywhere.
And Karen's got some follow up here. She's giving me a hard time in the chat. Love you, Karen. And Karen says she disagrees. She was in Asia and they use Magento above SAS because it's cheap. And then she follows up with Magento is not expensive. American Magento devs are expensive. And then Telesh is agreeing with that comment as well. I don't think we're disagreeing, Karen. I don't think we're disagreeing at all. I think we are completely and totally in agreement. But to the merchant, you're going to spend money on that e-commerce platform. I mean, there are factories in China that have people carrying wheelbarrows of stuff across factory floors because it's cheaper, because labor over there is cheaper than just buying a forklift, right? So we have to remember this is a world economy. We have a world audience. And so, yes, your costs will vary depending on how much you value a human hour. For skilled labor. And so if you're in an economy to where that skilled labor is cheaper, well, then your overall costs, or if you're using overseas developers, even if you're in the US where that skilled labor is cheaper, then yeah, you can cut your costs there. But the point is, it's not, unless you are technical yourself and you handle all of the work that goes into it and you place no value on your time, you're going to have to spend money to implement and maintain an open source version of the platform. You're going to have to pay for hosting unless you throw it on a Mac Mini in your closet, and I do not recommend you try that. But I think we're in agreement. Like it's really the software itself is free, but the hours that go into it are typically going to cost you money unless they're your own and you don't value them. You agree or disagree with that?
I agree with you. Karen also mentioned, what the cost versus like Magento 1 or Shopify, and she said that in Asia, Magento can be cheaper than software as a service. I'm kind of surprised about that because honestly, something like a Shopify plan costs like $29.99 a month, and I'm not sure, even with very cheap labor, I'm not sure how you can get below that.
It depends on what you're doing, though, right?
Project.
If you're trying to do something complicated, you may need Shopify Plus. If you're trying to hammer the APIs to drive some data in there, then you may be on a bigger plan. So, expensive or more expensive is relative. That's the problem with this conversation. That's really why we haven't had this conversation before, is because whether or not something is cheaper is depending on the context of what you're doing with it and how you're going about accomplishing that. If you're using overseas developers that cost very little, or if you've got, your neighbor's third cousin's little boy doing the development for you, then, you may be getting away dirt cheap. You may be cutting corners. You may be taking risk that you don't want with the platform. There's just a lot of nuance and subtlety in this conversation. I'm going to try to keep up. I've completely lost absolute control over the chat. I have no idea if anybody has posted any questions in there. I've got 10 pages of it here, and I'm trying this view, so I'm trying not to just like stare heads down the entire time. But if you're new around here, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to go for the sale, man, for a second here. I was going to tell everybody to hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell. If you're over on LinkedIn, give me a follow. You like this content. We'll keep bringing it to you if you keep coming and watching it. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What you've got?
Oh, no. I just wanted to highlight some of the comments, too. Eric from MageMojo, commented, we ended up being frontline support for Magento for enterprise customers for years. And I think that's true because, I've used MageMojo a lot in the past, and I think the host and agencies have had to historically cover for Magento enterprise support. And honestly, I don't think that Magento realizes the level of covering that's been done, because I think a lot of like merchants and agencies have almost given up on using like enterprise support because it's not it's not particularly or it's not responsive enough, you know. And so it sometimes it takes more time to try to package up your store, like zip up your store, database backups, and describe the problem and submit it to enterprise support than if you try to fix it yourself. And if you don't have a good sense of like, all right, they'll probably get back to me in a day or two, and we'll get this fixed. If you don't have that sense, you just stop trying it. I think it's kind of like a relationship. It's like, if your partner isn't listening to you, eventually will just like stop talking, and maybe eventually you'll leave. And a lot of the conversation I'm having, on Twitter and with Magento people right now is I'm really like trying to hit home. Look, like I think the ecosystem, the community feels really neglected, and I know that you're working on it. I've talked to Matt Doggett as well, of enterprise support. I know that they're ramping up as fast as possible, but at some point, if people are neglected long enough, they just have to look to other options. And I don't want that to happen to Magento. And that's really like why I'm saying these things.
Definitely don't disagree. That's a great thing about the Magento community is that we typically provide feedback as soon as Magento steps out of a lane that we think they should be in. By the way, I've given up completely on the questions in the chat. If you have posted a question and I have not answered it, then just post it again. I can't keep up. This is a very, very active chat. I do have one here from Jarrett. And Jarrett mentions, how does Magento Cloud deal with clients who are interested in using additional services or integrations like SQS or RabbitMQ? Honestly, Jarrett, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you there. If there's anybody that does know the answer to that question, please, if you would, post it in the chat. Let's get Jarrett an answer. And if nobody answers it, Jarrett, I'll ask. I'll find out. I will get you that answer. While we're on the stream, I want to go through kind of some of the enterprise-only features. We've talked about if you need some of these features, then that's what makes it the right platform for you. In that, you get it in the core and you don't have to write it from scratch. Now, I'm pulling this from an article titled 34 Features Available Only in Magento 2 Commerce Edition, which is a great blog post by Gage. Gage is a Magento agency over in Savannah, Georgia. Don't call Gage if you're looking for a Magento agency. Call me. I mean, Jamerson, right there.
No,
but
call me.
Okay, call him. I'm sorry. Call Netalico, and we can hammer it out. But Gage did a great blog post. I'm just giving him a hard time. Over in Savannah, I wished I was located over in Savannah. I still don't know why I picked Opelika, Alabama, but it's a good blog post. It goes through kind of the high level features of Magento 2 Enterprise. I'm just jealous because I wished I'd have thought of this blog post myself. And they kind of list them, and then you can click on them and you can see more information about them. I am going to post a link to that in the actual chat over here. I'll get it in the description of the video once this video is done, if anybody cares to kind of peruse that content yourself. But number one they mention is category permissions. And so apparently you can limit access to categories and viewing pricing and all of that stuff directly in the admin. Could be a fairly, based on, customer groups or whatever, several different ways of limiting that. I think several different things you could limit based on the customer group. And that's useful in some B2b scenarios. Maybe you're using it. Maybe you've got a loyalty program or a category specifically for your best customers. Gift cards, I don't know too many people that are really using the gift card system in Magento, but it's there. Most people who are going to do gift cards want it to be completely like seamless, where they can type in the number and take the money off the gift card and do all of that stuff, rather than it all be managed and stored in Magento. So most of the merchants we deal with that need that functionality are doing it a little differently anyway. Advanced catalog search. We all know it's no secret that the actual product search has been a big weakness of Magento since the beginning. So I'm not going to tout that as some advanced feature.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think Elasticsearch is in the Magento open source now as well. So
yes, is it? You're right. This was 2.2. So this may not be. They may have. Yeah, you're right. I believe Elasticsearch is.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
So all of this is 2.2 features. Did it come out in 2.3? Does anybody know when Elasticsearch was added to open source? Or are we mistaken about that? Somebody in the chat, correct us, please. There's also the banner system, which is kind of interesting. It allows you to show different blocks based on some different conditions, price rules, or if coupons applied. It's a small feature, but interesting and useful. Content staging is kind of nice to actually be able to see the content on the front end of the site before it goes live and get approvals on that is useful. Page hierarchy, again, I don't, you can organize them. That's another small feature that's not, just extremely huge. You do have customer segments, so it has some built-in segmentation, so you can show different things like banners and promotions and things to different customer groups. Again, a small but useful feature. Email reminders, so you can set automated emails based on shopping cart or wish list activity. Again, most merchants we're dealing with that are paying for an enterprise license are going to be using something like .mailer anyway to do a lot of that stuff. You've got
same for customer segments. I think that's a feature in a lot of software as a service, like plugins to Magento. So right. I don't know anyone that uses customer segments in Magento. They usually get it from some other AI service or whatever.
Good point. I'm going to skip over some of these gift registries. That's something that's pretty easy to replicate with a plugin as well. Google Tag Manager, which is not too difficult to replicate. Events and private sales. Again, I don't know if I know anybody that's really using that effectively, but it's in there. Rule-based related products is kind of nice if you have a really large catalog. To where you can set up some logic and don't have to manage that manually as products come and go from your catalog. Rule-based related products. Rewards and loyalty. Again, a lot of people will use some sort of service for that if you really want to take it to the next level, but you do have that functionality. Visual merchandiser is kind of nice for those non-technical folks to be able to go in there and actually merchandise the site. Multiple wish lists.
I will.
Go ahead. Jump in anytime, man. Just interrupt me. I'm rolling through.
Yeah. Visual merchandise, I think it's actually a pretty powerful feature, and I've tried to get third-party extensions that kind of replicate it, and there are some out there, but I've definitely had issues with the third-party extensions, and it's like on a particular merchant, I actually moved from commerce to open source. I think visual merchandiser was one of the things that we missed the most, and we're still kind of struggling with kind of reproducing on open source.
Definitely, that's one of those top level features that really make at least part of that license price worth it. Multiple wish lists. Is anybody using multiple wish lists? Please let me know if you know of a merchant using more than one wish list, because I probably want to go have a conversation with them. Additional payment methods, but I need to click on this one. I gotta see what they're talking about here. Magento Commerce supports additional payment methods, including CyberSource, eWay, and WorldPay. I don't even think that's worth noting. So I don't. I wished I'd have read that one beforehand and not clicked on it. Gift options, another one that's kind of whatever. Order archiving. Have you used order archiving on anything?
Um, I have in a limited capacity. I mean, uh, a few Magento stores are getting aged enough where, like, the order grid is kind of slow and getting clogged. So I could definitely see how order archiving could be beneficial of, having the orders still in Magento accessible at some level, but you don't want to slow down your grid with a million orders, searching through everything.
I would be interested to know, and I know it's not everybody. So this is a useful
Mm.
feature, but if you're doing the volume of orders that would really slow that grid down, I would be interested to know what percentage of those merchants are not using some sort of order management. Like how many of those are actually even logging into Magento to view those orders. So it's good that it's there if somebody needs it, but I'm curious as to how many merchants it's just a critical feature for.
That's very true. That's very true. And I mean, the Magento admin in general in Magento 2 is a bit slower than I think Magento 1. And I think that's really pushed a lot of merchants to getting some sort of PIM or order management software. They kind of stay out of the admin as much as possible now.
So I've completely lost where I was in this list here. Order archiving. Okay. Order by SKU, which is like the quick order for the B2b functionality. That's useful. Not terribly complicated functionality, but useful. They have a return system, which most merchants are going to customize anyway if you're doing a significant volume of returns because you're going to want to automate all of that. But you can piggyback off of this one to simplify the customization. Shopping assistance. And so you can actually kind of take over their cart and help them. Again, I don't know, it's useful, but I don't know how many merchants are actually leveraging that functionality. But if you want to be able to interact with your customers and just randomly drop things into their cart, that's a fun way to do that. Um, all right, so let's see. Store credit. That can be useful. Again, I think that really requires some sort of integration to use efficiently, especially in a B2B scenario, because you're probably managing that data in a back office system somewhere. Customer attributes manager, to where you can add different attributes for your customers easily. There's an admin action log, which again, that's for your developer. Nobody who buys the license cares about the developers and the tools they have.
Well, I think the admin action log is actually pretty beneficial. It's not like what the developers do. It's you can see everyone that logs into the like sales admin if they edit an order. We've actually had we've used that in the past, kind of trying to isolate where maybe one customer service representative was editing orders wrong, and we were trying to figure out who it was. It was nothing nefarious, but that was helpful. And there are third-party extensions that do the same thing, but it's a good feature, I think.
It's a useful feature, but I don't know if too many people are going to pay the license price for that one.
No, yeah, not just that one feature for sure.
Scheduled import, export, support tools. I got to click on this one to see what they mean there. Support data collector and system report. These tools may assist in identifying known issues in your systems when issues emerge. These tools can also be used as a resource during the development and optimization of the site. So again, something kind of useful for developers if they're creating or debugging a problem. All right, so I'm scrolling back up to the top here. All right, and then we get into B2B functionality, which is hands down worth the license price if you need the functionality of shared catalogs and company accounts, quick order, company credit, quotes, payment on account, requisition lists. If you need that functionality, just go ahead and pony up and write the check. There's also some functionality that has been released for enterprise only in 2.3, namely Page Builder, which we've touched on. I understand the angst a little bit of that not being rolled out into open source when we thought that was a very real possibility, or that that had actually been promised. But on the flip side of that, I understand them holding it back in that is a huge feature that plugs one of the two biggest weaknesses of the platform. And the two biggest weaknesses of the platform, in my opinion, have always been content management and on-page search. And so, Elasticsearch helps, but go ahead.
I was going to say on Page Builder too. So I'm at Shopify Unite this week, and they just announced sections for multiple page, and that's basically their version of Page Builder. But they announced it. It won't be probably available for months and months. So that's a feature that I think Magento is really like ahead of the game on Page Builder. It's really, really powerful. I've used it. I've seen it. And I just would really love it to come to open source. But also at the same time, I know why they're like, oh, this is our killer feature. I know what we said a couple months ago, but they're still trying to figure it out. I wish that they would have Page Builder as maybe a really expensive extension. I mean, maybe even $1,000 or something. And honestly, I think a couple of the features in Magento Commerce should be sold as killer, expensive extensions. I think one issue that we're kind of almost dancing around with is we're saying, oh, this feature is nice, but I wouldn't pay $20,000 for it. Okay, well, why couldn't you pay $1,000 for it? This one feature, Magento is supposed to be modular. It is modular. Those extensions are, should be piecemeal. With Magento kind of packaging it up and having a pretty high minimum price. I think there used to be a Magento professional license that was kind of a tier below the enterprise license. If they would do something like that, I think that a lot more people would adopt the enterprise features that they need and they really love, without having to just compromise and just go free. There's not a lot of tiers between free and $20,000.
Now, what if it wasn't like that, right? Because if you buy this piece of functionality, you have it forever. But you have to upgrade Magento, and maybe it doesn't work on the next version. And so you're provided free support for a module that you paid one time for. So what if they did the Adobe pricing for Creative Suite? What if you could get Magento and then you could a la carte certain features and functions, right? You got open source. You could pay a small license fee and get Page Builder. You could pay a license fee and get Bluefoot. But two of those are pretty close to just buying the whole enchilada. And so, if you buy two, you might as well just get the whole pie. Because what we had mentioned is individually, some of these features may not be worth the license price, but collectively, they really add to the value of the enterprise version of the platform. And if you're doing enterprise e-commerce, sometimes seemingly inconsequential features can be the difference in making that license price back in, numerous times and not getting those sales. And so, there's the whole side of things where, people don't get fired for buying from IBM. If you're an enterprise merchant, you want to make sure you've got the best platform so there are no excuses for the project to fail. There are a lot of things that go into that, but what if you can provide that level of support and assurance on kind of a modularity piece-by-piece basis? It's just a random idea.
No, I think that's a good idea, and I think the recurring part of it might be the way to go because, like as you said, you have to support it indefinitely. A lot of third-party extension providers handle that through you buy it and then you have 6 months of free support, and after that you have to pay more. And I've seen a couple Magento extension vendors actually have an option where instead of paying $200 up front, you could pay $30 a month for this extension, and you get support in perpetuity. I think Red Hat Enterprise Linux is actually a really great model for Magento to look at, because Red Hat is obviously an open source product. It's based on Linux, but they've really built a solid enterprise business based on an open source product. And like if you go to Red Hat's website, you can get Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The first option is subscription type, and you can do self-support, standard, or premium support. So you could theoretically, the analogy to Magento Commerce is you could get Magento Commerce features but not have support. And in essence, I think that's a lot of what merchants get right now. They because of support. So you can select your support, and then they also have add-ons. They have smart management, high availability, and that can add on. And this is a yearly license fee. I think that Magento could really look at that as a model for providing, creating revenue for the company, but not simultaneously like cannibalizing the commerce. Because I've talked to Gary Spector, and he said to me, he's head of sales at Magento, and he said to me, like, Magento open source is our biggest competitor with Magento Commerce, but also it's their biggest opportunity, because someone is already on Magento open source. It's a lot easier of a migration to get them to Magento Commerce. But as it stands right now, I think that there's such a big gap between free and $20,000+ that's a tough sell. And so if there's any way for Magento to like slowly ramp clients up into one of their kind of enterprise tiers instead of doing that jump, I think that would be a really big benefit to the merchants, and I think it would be a benefit to the ecosystem, and I think it would be a benefit to Magento as a company, because I know a lot of people think like I'm hating on Magento Commerce, but I fully realize that Magento Commerce is the fuel that fuels the engine, and Magento open source is the engine. But without the fuel, the dollars, honestly, without the revenue from Magento Commerce, they can't maintain Magento open source. And so I think at the end of the day, I think it is really important for Magento to be able to, be profitable in this business. But I don't think it should come at the expense of merchants maybe buying something that wasn't really the best value proposition for them.
Definitely. And there's a good conversation going on in the YouTube chat right now talking about cloud versus on-prem. And there's a lot of comments. I'm going to bring up Laura's here. Laura, thanks for watching. Mentioning or questioning, is cloud and on-prem, that's why you put a shock mount on this thing, so in case you hit it like that. Is cloud and on-prem the same price? Yes, unfortunately. Magento is a cloud company. They want to be a cloud company. Adobe is a cloud company, and they want to continue to do that. They really want to incentivize you to be on the cloud version of the platform. And so to do that, they quit offering a discount for the on-prem version. So theoretically, having the cloud with hosting provided is exactly the same price as taking the actual enterprise version of the software and hosting it elsewhere, which means technically the enterprise version on-prem is always going to be more expensive because you're going to have to figure out your own hosting. And right or wrong, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, that was the decision that was made. Now, there's some talk James is kind of mentioning in the chat there around the pricing, and not really sure if if $20,000 a year is kind of where that license starts. Mm-hmm. If you could even do that without the on-prem discount, I'm not real sure. They have adjusted the pricing some in the recent past, and I'm not sure I've actually seen, at least not kind of an entry-level cloud pricing quote with that new pricing. And so I'm not real sure. So I'm not going to comment on that, but I can reach out and see if I can get some answers around that. What are your thoughts on on-prem and cloud being exactly the same price?
Oh man, I understand why Magento is doing it, because they want to be a cloud company, and I think that's okay. But also, Magento Cloud and Magento is never software as a service. I think a lot of people might kind of get tricked into thinking Magento Cloud is Magento SaaS. It's Magento Go. Hopefully it's not Magento Go, but it's not. It's a package deal. It's a license discount. It's them wanting to really get into the hosting business. Magento Cloud is Magento hosting. There's no bones about it. They want to get in the hosting business, and they're using their leverage on the pricing and the licensing to basically give the hosting away for free, because they want so badly to control the software and the environment. And I think that's kind of a little scary, honestly, because Magento Commerce it's based on the open source core, and I think once you start giving control to just one person, putting all your eggs in one basket, it puts you at risk. I think the traditional Magento merchant has their agency, and they have their hosting, and I know that some agencies do hosting, but I don't recommend it. So, and then they have Magento enterprise support, and all those layers I think really protect them. But if you combine all those layers, and I'm not sure how long it will be for Magento to be Magento agency, but the more layers you combine, the more risk you put in a failure. There was a tweet yesterday of someone on cloud, and they couldn't deploy for 24 hours, and they weren't responding to their urgent ticket, and they had to go on Twitter to basically get some responses. And I think until Magento can really get their support solid, and as you referenced, the Magento Cloud support and the Magento Enterprise on-premise support is the same now. It's the same team. It's the same people. Until they can get that support solid, I pity the merchants that buy into the cloud and then have issues, because they're gonna really suffer until Magento can get to acceptable support levels. And I think particularly hosting support, I think it's another level of responsiveness. If something is wrong with your server, your site might be down. You might be losing tens of thousands of dollars in revenue. It might be a normal day and you're losing tens of thousands of dollars in revenue. It might be Black Friday, and your site goes down for a few hours and that costs you $1 million. I think until they can get their support solid, it's a risk, and it's a big risk.
So when their support is excellent and they've got all the bugs and kinks worked out, you're going to come back on and you're going to talk about how awesome it is, right?
I will. I mean, I've told people in Magento, I'm like, I want to sell Magento Commerce again. Like I used to with clients when I started them on open source. I was like just a freelancer. I was working with small clients. Once they got to the level that I thought enterprise was great, I was like, you put on your big boy pants and you get enterprise. But now I don't think for me personally, there's not a point where I would recommend a merchant to go from open source to enterprise. I think there could be a point, and there can be a point if done right from the Magento side. But right now, it's a bad state of things.
I think one of the greatest things, though, I want to make sure I mention this. One of the greatest things about the Magento community is that we have these conversations out in the open. One of the worst things about the Magento community is that we have these conversations out in the open. And I'm curious as to whether or not every platform has its limitations. Every platform has its problems, but there's not this open discourse, and that knife cuts both ways. It's great because I believe Magento has more passion and energy in its fan base, in its community than others because of this feedback, and they have more straight to the point, unabashed feedback, unfiltered feedback, and they can leverage that. On the flip side, we also have these out in open where people can use them as ammunition against the platform when they're selling against it. That's one of the reasons that topics like this are difficult, because it's an hour live stream and it's easy to take a 2-minute soundbite of somebody saying, "Don't do this." And so, it's important to understand the context of everything. And what we want is what's best for the platform. We want the platform to continue to thrive. We want it to continue to grow. And so we're very passionate about any of its perceived or factual shortcomings. And so, yes, there's some improvement to do there with enterprise support, but they are aware of that. We've given them that feedback, and they are acting. It's not a future thing. Like, they are acting on that right now, and it should show steady improvement. And I think it's a matter of weeks before we see significant improvement in those regards. We've been going. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really commend Gary Spector, VP of Sales from Magento, for reaching out to me and having a conversation with me recently about these things. And Matt Doggett, who's recently come on, a head of enterprise support. Matt seems like a really solid guy, and I worked with his team when I was doing Apple Mac support at NASA. He led the enterprise support team at Apple, and so I know he has the chops. And I think he's just come on in maybe the past 6 months, and I'm really excited and optimistic about that leadership and how he can really boost the team and get it where it needs to be.
Absolutely. I think he's headed in the right direction there. We've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. It's been a fantastic live stream. I apologize that I have not been able to keep up with the chat. I'm a little, I don't know if it's self-conscious, but I'm a little, I'm just sitting here looking down, and then I know I'm on camera and they're going to think I'm asleep. So I need some feedback from you guys. Do you like this split view where we've got both guests on the view at the same time? You want me to go back to the old switching here where I do have these nice, smooth, fancy little graphics here, and then I could switch over to the guest, and that's not his name. That's his name right there. Or do you prefer this side-by-side view? Let me know your thoughts. We're just continuously trying to improve the live stream experience. I thought this would be somewhat interesting, and I got to figure out, how to mix it so that I can try to keep up with the chat a little more. It's easier in an interview format where I'm just asking a question and then rolling on and not really paying too much attention, just kind of casually paying attention to the answer. But this being a conversation, it's really tough to keep up with that. Seems like Laura likes the split view over here. John says it depends on who the guest is, whether or not they want to see you or not. All right, so it looks like Cal likes both on the screen at the same time as well over on LinkedIn. So that's good. So the split screen is here to stay. So that's good. Joseph Maxwell is chiming in as well. It looks like it's a consensus unless we have a guest not worth watching, and then we have to split it. We have to flip it back and forth.
Right.
All right. So, all right, cool. So that's good feedback. If you would, while you're watching this, hit that thumbs up button. We got a ton of people watching over here on LinkedIn, watching over here on YouTube, and I need more thumbs ups. So hit those, man. Help us spread the word of what we're trying to do here. If you're new around here, hit that follow button if you're on LinkedIn, or hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. We've got another live stream tomorrow. I'm actually going to be talking about B2b e-commerce payments. So probably not as lively as this one was, but it's going to be an interesting live stream. We try to cover topics that interest me, and when somebody says, man, we do B2B payments, I'm like, what's the difference in a B2B payment and a B2C payment? And there's a lot of difference. So it was interesting, decided to do a stream about it. I do, Laura. Laura mentions here in the chat that I need someone to filter these and send them to me. We've actually got a system set up. I don't know. I'm going to have to unplug my other monitors maybe, or see this right here. See if I can get this over on the screen here. This right here is all of your comments in a system, and they can be queued up. So somebody could go through and find questions or interesting topics and queue them so that I can see just the queue, and then I can just choose from the queue to show on the screen. But I'm the only one here. So there's no one else to do that right now. But yeah, it's something we're working on. We can't pull them from LinkedIn. LinkedIn live stream is still fairly new and fairly archaic, but it looks like we've got it figured out. It's been smooth the last couple of times. So with that, I think we're going to call it a day. I appreciate everybody that participated in this chat. Mark Pizza emoji, Mark William Lewis, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your insights. If anybody has any questions or wants to get in touch with you, what's your contact information? How can folks reach you?
Probably, easiest is on Twitter at Mr. Lou, and or you can shoot me an email of mark@netalico.com. Yeah, thank you so much, TJ, for having me on. It was a really good conversation, and I think I really value these conversations, being able to speak openly. As myself as a developer, community insider, and also you as a partner, I think it's a really valuable part of the ecosystem, and I really appreciate that about Magento. And I think they have a goal and a core value to be transparent with the community, and so I appreciate that, and I'm excited about still the future of Magento and future conversations.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing everyone who can make it for tomorrow's live stream. We're trying to get more regular with these, and we may do more than one a week here in the future. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the next stream.